Willingness in itself is a healing modality because it unlocks infinite potential inside of us. It unlocks and opens, even if just a tiny crack, this door of possibility. And that is the space of surrender. And that is the space of infinite potential, infinite opportunity.
What's up, and welcome to the No Bullshit Manifestation Show. I'm your host, Kat Kozad, manifestation expert, money mindset and fulfillment coach, and multiple six-figure entrepreneur. Come sit with me while I spill the real tea on what it's like to practice using intentional manifestation, demystify all of the woo-woo and confusing bullshit that comes along with creating the life of your dreams, and give you a realistic view of what it's like to be on a personal, spiritual, and professional growth journey. The goal of this podcast is to support and guide you towards manifesting all of your dreams, shed light on the things that people are too scared to talk about, and encourage you to become the person who gets to have it all, be it all, and do it all. I am so happy you are here. Let's fucking do this thing. What's up, loves? Welcome back to another episode of the No Bullshit Manifestation Show. Today's episode is so fun for many reasons. One of those reasons being that I got to bring Sarah Collins onto the show, and Sarah and I have been a part of each other's worlds and a part of each other's vortexes for the past 3 or so years. Just through Instagram, we both used to live in Denver, Colorado, and connected somehow. We are still trying to figure it out. There's some sort of connection between free people and us then connecting over Instagram and becoming a part of each other's worlds and a part of each other's circles, and just have been able to watch the other one's journey and everything that has shifted and changed for us both over the past 3 years, which has been so special because both of us 3 years ago were not business owners and we're not in the position that we are in now, really connected to this authentic versions of ourselves and expressing our light in the way that we were born to share our light with the world. And it was so freaking fun to have Sarah come on to the show and just share her light. And in this episode, you will surely hear the light that she contains. It is absolutely contagious. The way that she just channels the most beautiful messages and wisdoms for all of you listening to today's episode. And Sarah is an intuitive herbalist, educator, published author, and healer. She is the creator of Sunlight Speaks, which is a personal brand that dives deep into self-healing by teaching her students how to cultivate authentic self-love and work with the medicines of the earth, which we're going to dive into inside of this episode. It is so freaking good. She is also a published co-author of the Amazon #1 best-selling book, Caged No More, which has stories from women who broke free of society's constraints. And her greatest fulfillment and passion is healing and guiding others back to their own power and their truth of their own inner light. And that's it's just been so beautiful to watch Sarah go through that and to experience that myself and really be able to connect with her on that experience. And I can imagine so many of you listening are also going to relate with both of our stories. And for everyone listening, I really want to let you know this is all going to be down below in the show notes, but Sarah has 2 incredible gifts that she is bringing to this show and that I want to spread news on in this show. First is a workshop that is taking place on November 7th, 2021. So that is a week from today, November 7th, 2021. It is all about herbs and herbs for wellness, the herbs that you can start to implement into your life for healing and wellness. And this is going to be taking place on November 7th. I have a link to it down below if you want to be a part of that workshop. Go check it out. There's a very small investment for it. So this is the perfect opportunity to get into this realm of healing and have Sarah teach you about it, because she is such an incredible and such a knowledgeable teacher. And then the second beautiful gift that she has for us is down below. You'll find it as well. Sarah has such a cool Etsy store full of different bath soaks and herbs and things to guide your healing journey. So if you are interested in any of those things, go check out Sarah's Etsy store. If you purchase anything, have an order over $25, 25 or over, use the discount code no bullshit 15 for a 15% discount. So good. Such a freaking incredible gift from her. And anybody who is interested in that, go check out the show notes down below. All of Sarah's links are there. So with all of that being said, we're going to dive into this conversation, and I hope that you all enjoy. Yay, guys, we have such a fun episode for you today. We have Miss Sarah Collins, who, crazy enough, we are just meeting for the first time in the online space, even though we have been a part of each other's worlds and vortex for the past 3 years. And we are just going to share lots of beautiful things with all of you today. So Sarah, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much, Kat, for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I'm so excited to connect. It's going to be so much fun. I feel it.
So fun. Yay. Cool. So let's kick this off with you just sharing with our listeners, who you are, what you do, and we'll go from there.
Absolutely. My name is Sarah. I am an herbalist, a healer, and a small business owner. So as of right now, the thing is, I'm such a multi-passionate creative. I have so many different kinds of offerings. And right now, my main focus has been herbal education. So really teaching people how to work with herbs and the medicine of the earth to heal their physical bodies, as well as their emotions and traumas and old patterns that aren't serving them anymore. So really integrating that healing with plants, basically. So I have a workshop coming up on that as well. I've done coaching around it. And I also have an Etsy shop where I sell my creations. So I do custom bath soaks and tinctures, all with these beautiful medicines to help people along their path.
So cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I love it. Yeah, no, I love it. And Sarah and I were talking about, right, as we were hopping onto this and meeting each other for the first time, because we have followed each other's paths for the past 3+ years, is how neither of us thought we were going to end up in the place that we are and what we're doing. So Sarah, tell us a little bit about that. What was the initial plan of what you thought you wanted for yourself and what you thought life was going to look like?
That's a great question. Because what I studied was psychology in school, and I always worked in the field of mental health, especially with kids. Also worked in crisis, and I was so passionate about helping people. And I have so much water in my chart. I have this affinity for the emotional world, and I gravitate toward people who are looking for emotional healing. That's, I've just always felt that's been my medicine. And so I always thought that I was going to be in psychology research, and or becoming a clinical psychologist or something along those lines. But there was something so restless in my soul, because I'm such a creative being, and my true self is so just wants to create and loves colors and fashion, and just there was something in me that I know so many people are beautifully able to do both, but I didn't feel fully fulfilled and I didn't feel fully expressed in that path.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we talked about like free people when we were talking about how we might have connected in Denver. And so like I've worked retail as well. I've worked those kinds of jobs, and I got that that fulfillment from the creative side. But there was just like this kind of disconnect between the two worlds that I never really felt um, like entirely 100% in my purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until last year, February, at the end of February, about 2 weeks before everything shut down, I ended my 6-year relationship, left behind a dog, an apartment, a beautiful man. And I literally went like full send into the unknown, and taking that step, or that leap rather, like literally jumping off a cliff,
Mm-hmm.
um, that miraculously brought me to the healing journey that I needed to walk in order to really discover what that purpose was, what that integrated version of myself looked like.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I wish you could like see and feel me over here, like full goosebumps, just started to tear up because I resonate with that so fully. Is like stepping into the unknown and almost like the crumbling that
Yes.
happens in order for us to become fully expressed and fully become ourselves, and how it doesn't feel like that's ever going to happen when you're in the midst of the crumbling and in the midst of the chaos. So if you feel comfortable sharing, like tell us a bit of like what the crumbling and the chaos looked like for you.
For sure. I'm super open about my journey, my experience. I feel like that in itself is so healing. I love connecting with people about, you know, our authentic experiences, because that's what life is. And yeah, so the crumbling looked like, basically I loved and still love this person so much and care about them so deeply, but there was something in my soul that was just telling me like there's just more. There's more. Like there's something, like I didn't feel 100% like I was fulfilled. And there was like, in Frozen 2, like of course we're 10 minutes in, I'm quoting a Disney movie, but
I love it.
in Frozen 2, there's like this call she hears at night, and she's just like, it's a stirring in her bones of restlessness and knowing that there's this beautiful life path out there that she's just not aligned with. And so it basically hit a fever pitch, and I was honest and he was honest, and we decided to part ways. And basically, like overnight, this beautiful life that we had built together of like stability just crumbled, and all I could see was the 2 feet in front of me. I went to go stay with a friend. So she was actually a travel nurse, and she was subletting from somebody, and gratefully, like I had a beautiful connection with both of them. So this woman who she was renting from allowed me to stay and her like on her couch basically. And I just like I had just started like looking into manifestation and like the universe and like astrology. um and so I was like, okay, well, like everything that's been like, I've seen all these signs that are just telling me that like surrender is like, when you take a big leap, like there's big rewards and everything's going to be okay. So I just like, I cried and I prayed and I just fully surrendered. And like within days, okay, like I met this girl on a Facebook, like Denver subletting group, and she was like, oh, like I'm into yoga and plants and like healthy communication. And I was like, oh my God, hello, they're speaking my language. And so we connected. And then when we made the decision to live together, 2 days later, we looked at a place. 2 days after we were signing a lease, 2 days after that, we were moving in. So within
Oh my gosh.
a week of ending my relationship, I think maybe it was 10 days, 10 days of ending my relationship, I was set up with a new life completely. And from there, that's when everything unfolded in the external. And so I was spending all my time at home, and I really started diving deep and opening myself to personal learning and podcasts. And I just loved experiencing life as an independent woman for the first time as an adult. I baked brownies in my underwear, and I listened to the podcast that I want to listen to. I watercolored. I, learned how to plant herbs, and, it was just this beautiful unfolding of who I really was in this homecoming after feeling like I had lost a lot of who I was in my relationship unconsciously.
So powerful. I love what you just said, like a homecoming, like that journey of coming home to yourself and really recognizing that like that started with this little twinge of like, there's more, like that aching of like, there's more when you are in that stable, committed relationship. And I can imagine for so many of the women listening, for all of the people listening, is like, they can relate with that feeling of more, but being incredibly fearful to allow themselves to even get to know what more is.
Right.
And so, you go.
Because we don't get to know before we know what's on the other side. And as I'm walking through a similar crumbling right now, or in a new, like, different, like, stage or a different point of crumbling than before. But in a lot of ways, my life is changing very rapidly and in beautiful, miraculous ways. And what I'm being constantly reminded by God is, like, you don't get to know before you know. You get to trust. You get to trust. That's what it is. It's the leap. You've done this before. You've done this. And I'm like, oh my God. Yeah. But it's so hard for people to trust, like, to have that blind faith. We want that 100% validation letter from the future, like, surprise, congratulations, it all worked out, everything was perfect and even better than you could have possibly imagined, I promise, like you're good. But we don't get that letter. We get to give that letter to ourselves. And that level of trust and faith is so confronting to so many, myself included at times, because as we walk this path, it's just a deeper and deeper initiation into the trust that we have in ourselves, the trust that we have in the universe, and the trust that we have in life.
Yeah, absolutely. I love everything that you just said, that it's like you giving it to yourself, especially in a world that, in my opinion, has taught us not to trust ourselves and to not listen to the pulls and the cues and the way that our body responds to things, and the way that, like, genuinely everything that we are creating for ourselves, everything that we are manifesting every single day, the good, the bad, the ugly, that it's like our minds, our bodies, and our souls already know whether it's aligned for us or not. And just giving ourselves the permission to slow down enough to listen to it and to hear it and to build it and to take the step towards it, or the leap, the like full on leap, the free falling in it, and trusting that, like, no matter what that looks like, that is the path that you're supposed to be going on, because you already have this like inherent knowing.
Yes, exactly. Yep. 100%.
Super powerful. So tell me, like, with stepping into where you're at right now, that journey of like ending the relationship, having things start to come together in the external world, like what do the next steps of your journey look like? What sort of healing happened for you in order to step into who you are right now?
So much, honestly. It was for me, it was a crazy journey. Like, I ended up I ended up starting a boot camp online that was all about discovering your purpose. And I ended up quitting my job with no plan. And I started working super part-time as a VA for an entrepreneur. And I ended up moving to the mountains in Colorado to live in community with somebody that I met in the program. Like literally, like I lived in a trailer on their property and like basically manifested the situation where I didn't have the pressure to make an income and all of my needs were just like beautifully met. And I had this like vast space to explore myself. And with that came so much. Like I started doing like money healing and basic shedding of programming things that we come across in like Instagram teachings and stuff like that. And like, not that money is basic healing. It's very intense and like it's always, unfolding for us as we reveal and peel back more and more layers, especially in our ancestry and all the things. But what was really alive for me last year was inner child healing. And I have a coaching program around it that I love. That's 6 weeks long. That's basically the manifestation of my own journey that I walk people through. And it's learning how to really sit with yourself and be with what's there and notice your programming and learning how to reparent yourself and self-soothe, because so many of us carry, whether they're big T traumas or little T traumas, they're all traumas. And so many of us don't know how to cope with them and don't know how to heal them so that they keep manifesting in our lives over again through our relationships, through our friendships, through our jobs, and through the choices that we make. And that, of course, reflects in the thoughts that we think and what we're, beaming out to the universe and calling in. And my reality got so triggering last year and so intense because the situation was very intense. I chose it and I'm so grateful that I did, but not having a job, maybe making like $200 a month and living in the mountains and in a trailer was like nothing I had ever experienced before. And, getting to like go down to the main house to take showers and get running water and like all these things. It was very confronting. Mm-hmm. And what this situation showed me was I still had this inner child in me who was screaming and needing to be heard and was scared and didn't feel taken care of. And it was like being confronted with those emotional patterns within myself and learning how to be my own mother through it. And like beginning the process of regulating those emotions and healing those spaces and stories inside of myself that kept me in these cycles and these patterns so that I could really break free from them and bloom into the kind of person that I wanted to be. And that's what the program is called, is Bloom, for that exact reason. So for beautiful. Me, thank you. For me, it was definitely a lot of inner child healing, for sure.
Yeah. I love that. And I want to go there because I can imagine a lot of the people listening have heard about inner child healing, but are kind of like, what the fuck? Like, what does that mean? I remember the first time inner child healing was introduced to me was the book You're a Badass by Jen Sincero. And she said something about like, if I can save one person from having to go on a play date with their inner child, then like, that's my goal. And I was like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And as I have really stepped into my own healing journey, I have recognized how powerful going on that play date with my inner child is, and like really getting to know her and love her and reparent in the way that it feels as though I needed but didn't get. Yes. So yeah, for our listeners, in your own words, like what is inner child healing?
So inner child healing for me is it's tuning in to that childhood version of yourself that always lives inside of you. The one who is, you know, still somewhere in time and space playing and creating and experiencing and really, oh, how do I even say this? I like see all these images in my head and I'm like, how do I bring those into words though?
Yeah.
But I would say like tuning in to the things that you needed as a child and did not receive, and learning how to give those to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And getting to know where the experiences that you had as a child informed the stories you started to tell yourself, which informed the reality that you created. And working with that place inside of you to transform those stories, to tell yourself a new, more empowering story, and change the reality that you're creating for yourself. So let me give an example. So if you, when you were a child, you had a lot of like rocky friendships and things, just like you had these experiences where there was discord, or there were a lot of conflicts that came up, you could begin to tell yourself unconsciously the story that like, I don't have any friends, or I like my friendships are always really rocky. And then so that's the story you tell yourself about the thing, the neutral thing that you experienced in your childhood, which, you know, could be for any reason or any circumstance, but it's what you came to believe about yourself that you start to anchor in to your unconscious. And then that will play on loop in your reality because you're an infinite creator being. And then throughout the course of your life, you notice that like every time you make friends, like there's drama that comes up, or there's a falling out, and then you guys part ways and you're like, what's happening? Well, it all comes back down to this story that your inner child wrote about his, her, their experience, and giving energy and belief to that story is what keeps perpetuating it. So being able to sit with your inner child and say like, I see you and I understand that must have been really, really hard for you. And I love you and I accept you. And we're choosing a different story, because the reality of the situation is that that could have come about in our childhood for an infinite number of reasons that had nothing to do with us, our worth, or our ability to make friends. And so now we're choosing to tell ourselves the empowering story that yes, that happened and I learned so much from it. And now I call in lifelong friendships that are strong and sturdy and supportive and loving. And then from there, allowing yourself to embody that and therefore create it, you know? And the healing part comes from you acknowledging that space within yourself, acknowledging that child who's in pain, and really loving them and saying, I see you, I see your experience, I honor that, because that within itself is transformation. That's alchemy, because these things come up in our reality, not because they're trying to punish us, but they're trying to show us the places where we can love ourselves more, where we can claim our power more, and create the shifts that we want to see.
Oh, I love that. So much power and all of that. And that is such a perfect example. And I definitely recognize in my life that almost all of the self-sabotaging behaviors that I had carried out my entire life stemmed from my inner child and the stories and the experiences that happened as a kid, and what I created meaning based off of those different things. And what you just said is like these different experiences and these things that create hardship or inner turmoil or pain or whatever it is inside of us, they're not here to punish us. They're
Yeah.
here to show us, to be an opportunity for us to turn inwards and to understand them so that we can ultimately get closer to ourselves and healing our inner child. And when you do that, it's like that sense of wonder for life, that excitement for life comes back to the surface, just like when we were kids. It's like the
Yeah.
wonder and excitement that we had about all of these different things that was so powerful for me to recognize. Was like, wow, I'm so much more in tune with that when I am aware of what my inner child needs. So I'm super
Yeah.
curious for you, like what were some of those things that came up as like, this is something that my inner child needs like healing with?
That's a great question. Let me tune in for a second. Yeah. So for me, a big healing for me was acknowledging my own light, my own magic, my own beautiful self-worth, because I was so, yeah, this is a beautiful thing to talk about, to speak into, because it ties so into when I first left my relationship and I was sharing how I started unfolding and coming home to myself and doing all the things that I was like guided to do. Like I was curious about like watercoloring, and I started getting curious about herbs, which I never knew that I would ever be curious about. And I remembered how when I was a child, I loved Ireland. So I started like, you know, like looking into Ireland again and like listening to like Celtic music and like just all these like fun things. Because I had, without realizing it, given myself entirely over to my relationship. You know, like I looked in my closet and it was all like outdoor wear and like climbing gear. And like, if you know me and you've like seen my Instagram now, you're just like, what?
Yeah.
So it was just like this tendency to like really become who I felt like I needed to be to survive, and to feel love. Not because anybody ever asked me to, but because that's just what I assumed that I had to do. And so when I moved to the mountains, something that came up for me was like in Denver, when I had that little place, like I felt so sovereign. And like, because I was alone, I was like tuning into my own self, my own needs. And then as soon as I moved to the mountains, I was fully immersed in their way of life, and their like, even in the way I dressed started to change slightly, and my eating habits. And like I was just kind of like unconsciously melding myself into who they were. And it was like this energy of putting everyone around me on a pedestal and trying to mirror them so I might be worthy, so I might receive all the things that the universe wanted to give me, or that people said the universe wanted to give me. And my tendency was to put all of my attention and focus on the people around me and wanting to be like them, and completely neglecting myself and who I was and what I cared about and what I felt and what I wanted to create, because I had no idea. And that's why, like, you know, all years ago, like maybe 2 years ago, I started like getting curious about the online space and being a business owner. And I had no idea what I wanted to do. And it's because I didn't know who I was. I was so wrapped up in what everybody else was creating, and trying to find a way to mirror it, or be what other people needed me to be so that I could make an income. And I wasn't really curious or caring about like what my actual heart wanted to create.
Yeah.
And so the healing for me was going inward and just spending time with myself and seeing myself as the beautiful, divine, worthy creator being that I saw in everybody else. And it was this lifetime of putting everybody else on a pedestal and seeing everybody else light except for my own. That began to crumble. And I was invited to see myself clearly, and to see and know and truly believe in my worth.
So powerful. So powerful. And do you recognize that like the reason that you put everybody else on a pedestal stems from something that happened in childhood or like a story that you created for yourself as a kid?
Yes, absolutely. I felt very misunderstood as a child. And I had a lot of experiences that left me feeling really different. You know, I was diagnosed with epilepsy when I was 5. So I had like I just remember like parent teacher conferences to talk about me and taking gigantic horse pills before going to sleepovers and wearing pull-ups till a really late age. And like the way my family navigated it, and I wrote about this in the book chapter that I published recently, and had a beautiful healing conversation with my parents before releasing it to really talk about this. So so much love and healing has come about in addressing this, and I know that they really were just doing what they believe was best for me, but the energy around it was, I interpreted it as shame because we didn't talk about it. Like we kind of pretend like they gave me the pills and we pretended it didn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
And so like there was this kind of shame energy, and I just felt very different and lonely because I didn't really understand what was happening to me, and nobody else that I knew at between the ages of 5 and 10 had epilepsy. So I I just had this story from a very, very young age that I was different. And because I didn't receive a lot of the emotional support that I needed and the validation that I felt like I needed, that I was beautiful and worthy and a bright light, um, I just I came to believe that I wasn't all those things, and I saw everybody else shining so brightly. So I was like, okay, well, if I just do what they do and I just act like everybody else, then they'll like me, then they'll love me, and then maybe then good things will happen. Um, and yeah, I recognized that I also like, where do I want to go with this? I had a train of thought and then it just completely dissolved.
All good.
But yeah, that was a huge part of it, was just feeling really different.
Yeah.
And then that manifested in different ways, even after the epilepsy left, it just, that kind of feeling of like not feeling very emotionally understood. And, you know, falling into the place of like low self-worth and seeking outside of yourself for love and answers, like we're all unfortunately very strongly taught to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I resonate so much with everything that you just said. And that piece of feeling as though like there is something weird or wrong with you. And if you were to act in the ways that you see these people who are getting love and validation, then maybe you'll get it too. That's been such a huge piece of my story, and really stepping into this place of it's safe to be seen. It's safe to be like the weirdo. Like I love being weird. It's like my favorite fucking thing about myself.
Right?
And like allowing that real light to come out and recognizing that we get to validate that for ourselves, and by us validating it for ourselves and releasing the need and like detaching from the need to have it from other people, your people find you.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a honing signal, like
Yeah.
it calls all your fellow weirdos in, the ones who just get you. And the more you
Totally.
allow it, the more you find your own magic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Which I would love to talk about like your magic with the herbs that you do, like the work that you do with herbs and everything there. So tell us about how that really came into place, like finding out. I know you're saying in this piece of like tuning back into your inner child that came to the surface and you're like, wow, I didn't know that this was something that lit me up so much. So from
Yeah.
that point, like how did you get to where you are now?
That's a great question. Yeah. So it was around that same time when I moved into that little place in Denver, and I was doing all the things that my creative, joyful inner child was calling me toward. And it was honestly as simple as somebody that I knew posted on Instagram that they had like a screenshot of a podcast episode um, from this podcast called Medicine Stories. And she was talking about how it was like about like herbs and like folklore and storytelling. And like that was the energy of it. And something in me was like, yes. And I was like, really? And she was like, yes. I was like, okay. Because I mean, I love myth and folklore and all things like storytelling. And I felt really curious. I was like, okay, like plants, sure. And I listened to the first episode, and the way that this woman spoke about, I believe it was Rose, the way that she spoke about Rose, I fell completely in love with the idea that plants literally are living, breathing medicine emotionally, physically, spiritually, and how we ancestrally have been in relationship with the land, and how it's here to heal us, to heal our bodies, to raise our frequencies, to really nurture and nourish us. And now that I'm speaking that, of course it resonated with me then, because I was seeking that nurture, that safety, that love, and this vibration of like feeling like I was cocooned inside the safe, loving, warm arms of these words, and what the medicine of the plants can really give to us. Like I fell and melted into the arms of herbalism. And so that podcast led me to a book. And that book, of course, like it just spoke to my storyteller. Like my Venus is in Cancer. So like I feel so resonant with just like all the like romantic, ooey gooey, beautiful like words, storytelling. And so this book was lined up into the 13 months. And if you read the book, you'll know the 13th month. But I opened it to April, and it was all about violet leaf. And it talked about how violet is this beautiful medicine for recovering from grief, and how it dissolves hardness from around the heart and the walls that we've built up against life. And it allows healing in, it allows love in, and it transforms the heaviness. And so it went into these beautiful emotional qualities as well as the physical qualities. And I was engrossed, I was captivated with it. And so I started reading, I started listening, I started gathering information. And, as I learned, I would buy the box tea version from the store, and I would go on walks to see what I could find. And I like picked up a dandelion and ate it, like, because I was like, because apparently you can do that. And at the same time, I was living in a city where there's lots of pesticides sprayed. So if any of you are thinking about doing that, do it, but just be wary where you are.
Yeah.
So like, don't poison yourself. So I started exploring that side of myself. And then the woman I moved to the mountains with was a clinical herbalist. So the universe was literally like, I took these tiny little steps, and they're like, boom, here you go. And so when I went to go live with her, she trained me. Like, she's a plant witch herself. And we were huddled in her little apothecary, like, as she taught me about the different energetic properties, and how to blend a tea for gut healing and sore throats, and the magical properties as well. And So all of last year was just really allowing myself to be held by the medicine of the earth and to really dive deep and explore and cultivate relationship with this magical world that just exists all around us. Um, and I first did inner child healing in my business. Actually, no. So it led me to doing bath soaks. And I just felt called to do one day. And I was like, I don't know, I guess I'll try this. Like I had all those loud stories, just like, you don't know what you're doing. And like, but I was like, the things that like the tiny little actions that we can take where our ego gets the loudest about, like those are usually like the most transformative. So I made a bath soak and then when I lived in the mountains, I started making them for my community, like blending them just intuitively. Like I felt like the plants would literally like call me over, like be like, this one, like raspberry leaf, hibiscus. I'm like, oh, okay. And I would just like kind of do my thing. And like these women would take the baths and they would be like, oh my God, like they could feel the emotional healing that took place just with the vibration of what I could create. And so that's when Sunlight Speaks was born. And I started doing these blends for new moon, full moon, custom, pregnancy, all these things, and taking what I learned and blending it with my own creativity and bringing this first little step into form.
So cool. So cool.
Thank you.
Especially, yeah, it's like hearing this piece of, because I feel as though the world does a really good job of like tuning us out to the fact that like that is available to us at all times. And that just like you said, it's like we're supported and like taken care of and like nurtured by the earth at all times. But like we really forget that. And to be able to see that in your own life and have this intuitive sense come into you of like this and this and these different pieces and bringing them to life and giving yourself permission to do it in the first place, that like it's created this impact and really been able to help other people heal and feel into that place within themselves. And a question that comes up for me on that is, so for someone who maybe is kind of like tuned out to the fact that this is available to us at all times, and that like there are all of these like healing modalities and like magical pieces of life out there, like do they need to be like tuned onto or like tuned into the fact that like that is a way to heal yourself? Or can somebody who's completely closed off to the idea of that step into like allowing themselves to have a soak or learn about herbs or anything in order to, or like to start to feel that healing inside of themselves?
I love that question. The willingness is key, and sometimes for some people, just taking a bath in itself is a step of willingness. Like you don't need to be fully convinced and on board in order to receive healing. You just have to be willing. And that's true, I think, most every area of life. And I have seen magic happen when someone softens into curiosity, just being like, okay, I'm not fully sold. This is a little weird for me, but I'm just going to take this step. And willingness in itself, I feel like this is just coming through me right now, but willingness in itself is a healing modality. Ooh, I love that. I'm going to say that again. Willingness in itself is a healing modality because it unlocks infinite potential inside of us. It unlocks and opens, even if just a tiny crack, this door of possibility. And that is the space of surrender. And that is the space of infinite potential, infinite opportunity. because like what I'm seeing in my head as I'm saying this is like a woman just taking an Epsom salt bath. And for her, that is like a big deal because maybe she doesn't do those things for herself normally, or she's been resistant to self-care. But through doing the action anyway, she's showing the universe, she's showing herself that there is willingness. And in that bath, she softens. And in that softening, like even if it's just her back hurts a little bit less the next day, that is healing. That is healing. The healing is in the willingness. The healing is in what can happen in that space of willingness. And when we open that door, the magic, it doesn't happen to us, it pours through us. And I think my example is actually perfect for this of, you know, having so many stories around making a bath soak. Like I remember at Sprouts, I got like hibiscus flower in it, and my ego was like, what are you going to do with that? You don't even know what that means. Like, what is that? And like, I was like, I don't know. I just feel like getting hibiscus. I got like hibiscus and lavender. And I got home and I like just got like some apricot oil and some salt. And it's like, I don't like know what I'm doing, but I'm just going to do it anyway. And like weeks later, I was straight up channeling soaks. I mean, I was straight up channeling in general, but that's a completely different podcast episode. But like, but I was channeling, like I was in a kitchen and just like, you know, met somebody for the first time that day and heard raspberry leaf and then like hibiscus. And I was like, okay. And because I was willing, I went with it. And because I went with it, more started to pour through. You know, it all started with that tiny little DIY in my living room. And in that space, magic was allowed to come into form. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I want to phrase this in a different way for the listeners too, because I feel as though like going back to what we were talking about at the very beginning of like your willingness to recognize that there was more and like get curious about more is what led to the action that allowed you to understand what more was. Just like your willingness to continually listen and get curious about your life is what then allows more of like the healing and the opportunity and like magic to show up in your life. And it doesn't always have to be, I feel as though one of the things that I hear a lot in the world of like personal development, spirituality, business, whatnot, is like it always being like these massive leaps of faith. And like we eventually take those at some point. If you're on this journey, like, you know it. And if you're just starting this journey, you will take one at some point. It's okay if you're not ready for it yet. Yes. You'll never be ready for it. But with that is like just the willingness to open yourself up to it in the first place is allowing, like you said, just like that crack is allowing more of that opportunity and like expansiveness to flow through you in whatever way that looks like. And with that, like that does build trust. When you get curious and when you are willing and you see what happens by being willing and being curious, that totally builds the trust of like, okay, like this is the path.
Yes, exactly that.
It's so beautiful. I love
amazing.
it. So last question I have for you is, for anybody who's listening, who is resonating with this message of like, they feel as though they were on a path that wasn't serving them or are on a path that isn't authentic to what they desire for themselves, and they know that there's more and they are curious about more, what would you say to them?
Be brave enough to be honest about how you really feel. I feel like there's so many things I could say, like take the leap, you know, take the risk, it's worth it. And, you know, yes, that's true 100%. But I feel like there's a million, you know, Pinterest quotes out there that say that. And I think it starts with being brave enough to be honest about how you really feel and what you really want, and be willing to believe there's another way for you to live your life, another way for you to experience your reality, another way for you to rise, expand, open. Yeah, be willing to look. And from that space, that's when miracles and magic happen.
Absolutely. Girl, the amount of times you gave me chills throughout this conversation is insane.
I've been feeling too.
Like, that's how you know this is pure magic right here.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much for everything that you shared with us today. And for all of the listeners, I'm sure they're going to be obsessed with you after hearing the magic that took place in this. So how can they connect with you? What do you have going on? What can they be a part of? And yeah, just like give us all the deets.
Yes, absolutely. So you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Sunlight Speaks. That is the name of my personal brand. Right now, I just announced a workshop that I'm doing on November 7th. That's all about how to start bringing in basic herbs into your wellness routine. So that's going to be taking care of the physical and emotional bodies. And I'm going to be giving a quick mini lesson on how to begin blending your own healing teas at home. So that is going to be in just under 2 weeks. I'm super excited about that. I am in the midst of restocking my shop right now on Etsy. You can also find me at Sunlight Speaks there. And I have a beautiful 15% off code for your community if you'd like to share.
Absolutely.
So it'll be 15% off of 25 or more. And the code for your beautiful listeners is no bullshit 15.
Yes.
I thought you'd love that.
That's so good.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. And yeah, I feel I'm in this transition period right now, but I feel a lot more offerings coming in the coming months. I have so many ideas for how to work with people and bring more medicine forward. So definitely stay tuned in. And I'm so excited to connect with anyone and everyone who comes forth from this podcast. I'm so excited to connect with your community.
Yay, amazing. And for all of you listening who is curious and is willing to open themselves up to the healing powers of what Sarah has been talking about in this episode, use that gift that she is giving to you, no bullshit 15 on Etsy, and like allow yourself to give yourself that opportunity to just open yourself up to what it is all about, like this healing journey is all about, and that it doesn't have to always look a specific way, that it can be you taking a bath, you smelling something so beautiful, like opening yourself up to it. It doesn't always have to look like reading the personal development book or being in a one-to-one coaching container, like whatever it is. And this is like the perfect opportunity for anybody who's curious about this realm of work whatsoever, or who's already part of this realm of work, to like go check out what Sarah has to offer. So thank you again, Miss Sarah, for coming on to the podcast. This was so incredible.
Yes, I had so much fun. Thank you so much for having me in your space, Kat. I had a beautiful time connecting with you, and I'm so excited for future collaborations.
Oh gosh,
and
me too.
To watch you continue to unfold. Your journey is so beautiful, and you share such powerful medicine. So thank you for what you do and for holding this space.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I'm so grateful to have these no bullshit talks with you. If you enjoyed today's episode or the podcast as a whole, please spread the love by leaving me a review on iTunes or sharing the podcast with others. This is how I will be able to spread more of these good vibes and be able to make more of an impact on the lives of others. And if you're not already part of all of the goodness and communities that I have to offer, check out the show notes. I have links to the different ways that I can support you on your manifestation journey and help you live a life full of more money, fulfillment, and freedom. But that is all for now. So big love and hugs, and I will chat with you soon, babe.